Venezuela's ongoing descent into economic and political chaos is a cautionary tale of the dangerous influence that resource wealth can have on developing countries. Venezuela is an example of a petrostate where the government is highly dependent on fossil fuel income, power is concentrated, and corruption is widespread. Petrostates are vulnerable to what economists call Dutch disease, in which a government develops an unhealthy dependence on natural resource export to the detriment of other sectors. Venezuela continues to grapple with economic and political hardship under President Nicolas Maduro, but US sanctions relief in exchange for democratic reforms have sparked hope for a revival of the oil industry. Venezuela, home to the world's largest oil reserves, is a case study in the perils of becoming a petrostate. Since it was discovered in the country in the 1920s, oil has taken Venezuela on an accelerating but dangerous boom and bust ride that offers lessons for other resource-rich states. Decades of poor governance have driven what was once one of the Latin America's most prosperous countries to economic and political ruin. In recent years, Venezuela has suffered economic collapse, with output shrinking significantly and rampant hyperinflation contributing to a scarcity of basic goods such as food and medicine. Meanwhile, government mismanagement and US sanctions have led to a drastic decline in oil production and severe underinvestment in the sector. But Caracas hopes that Washington's decision to ease an array of sanctions on Venezuela oils and gas sector, including allowing US oil giant Chevron to resume operations in the country, would signal a potential deterrent. Petrostate is an informal term used to describe a country with several interrelated attributes. Government income is deeply reliant on the export of oil and natural gas. Economic and political power are highly concentrated in an elite monetary, and political institutions are weak and unaccountable, and corruption is widespread. Countries often described as petrostates include Algeria, Cameroon, Chad, Ecuador, Indonesia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Libya, Mexico, Nigeria, Oman, Qatar, Russia, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela. So, what is behind the petrostate paradigm? Petrostates are thought to be vulnerable to what economists call Dutch disease, a term coined during the 1970s after the Netherlands discovered natural gas in North Sea. In an afflicted country, a resource boom attracts large inflows of foreign capital, which leads to an appreciation of the local currency and a boost for for imports that are now comparatively cheaper. This sucks labor and capital away from other sectors of the economy, such as agriculture and manufacturing, which economists say are more important for growth and competitiveness. As these labor-intensive exports industry lag, unemployment could rise and the country could develop an unhealthy dependence on the export of natural resources. In extreme cases, a petrostate forgoes local oil production and instead derives most of its oil wealth through high tax on foreign drillers. Petrostates' economies are then left highly vulnerable to unpredictable swings in global energy prices and capital flight. The so-called resource curse also take a toll on governance. Since petrostates depend more on export income and less on taxes, there are often weak ties between the government and its citizens. Timing of the resource boom can exacerbate the problem. Most petrostates become dependent on petroleum while or immediately after they were establishing a democracy. State institutions and the independent civil service and private sector and rule of law. Leaders can use the country's resource wealth to repress or co-opt political opposition. How does Venezuela fit this category? Venezuela is the archetype of a failed petrostate. Oil continues to play the dominant role in the country's fortune more than a century after it was discovered there. The oil price plunged from more than 100 per barrel in 2014 to under $30 per barrel in early 2016. sent Venezuela into an economic and political spiral, and since that, the economy of Venezuela is being going down to the tulips.